Hello, everybody, and welcome to Late Night Football. Welcome to another episode. I mean, it's been an interesting 24 hours, hasn't it? But the title of the video says it all. I mean, the ESL dead in the water. People think that's what's happening, but it's been an interesting 24 hours as my camera continues to act up for some reason. But I mean, what a time! What a time we have seen. It began with Chelsea get backing out of the European Super League. You know what? I actually feel bad for Jose Mourinho because I'm actually supposed to do a video on Jose Mourinho getting sacked, and now we're not going to do that today either. We're not going to be able to do that. But I mean, Chelsea backed out to be in things, and obviously a lot of pressure. Then Manchester City backed out, and now we know that Barcelona and Atletico Madrid are probably also going to back out. Not confirmed at the time of this being recorded. That might change as the day goes, but there are rumors, strong rumors that those two also are backing out. And I mean, there's also reports that Manchester United will also back out. So those are unconfirmed as of this point. At the time that I'm recording this, that might change by the time that you see this. That might change by the time you uh, by the time in a day or two it might change. So keep an eye out for that. But I mean, the fallout is starting to happen. It's happening, and it's going forward. And I mean, to tell you the truth, this is just surprised me as such, because Chelsea and Manchester City don't really need the money, right? They're not in football for the money. They're more about, we're not going to change our opinion on that. The fact is that they are in it to sports wash their image, and they need their fans to be on their side for that to happen. Maybe Roman Abramovich a bit less, but for them, really, football isn't about making money. It's about finding a way, to connect with the fans, making sure that there's a positive image of their regime, and of their personal brand and personal image. So it makes sense that they, when the fan backlash happened, that they would back out, because they don't want a negative fan reaction to anything that they do. So they, it makes sense that they would back out of it. And doesn't surprise me as much, but at the same time, it's a good move nonetheless. I think you have to credit that it was a good move. It takes courage to be the first person to back to say that something's wrong, and to understand that they made a mistake. And Chelsea and Manchester City, uh, get my applause for that, obviously, for doing that. Uh, and then it's about like a dominoes, right? One falls and all the others start in the line. And there's so many things that have happened since then. I mean, there's already Manchester United. Ed Woodward has resigned from his post. Not officially, nothing to do with the ESL, but I do think that that played a part, because I think the Glazers were probably looking for a scapegoat, and Ed Woodward fits that bill, right? I mean, probably was resigning anyway, and I think the Glazers kind of knew that this will be a positive spin story that they can put out, that oh hey, guess what, Ed Woodward is leaving, and so to blow this whole ESL fiasco, like how Tottenham did it yesterday, with tried to do it yesterday with Jose Mourinho. Now I think United did the same, so they're like, okay, well, ESL is a fiasco, but hey, guess what, Glazers also leaving, so here you can have a bone. So I think that's probably what it is more about. But still, again, a positive outcome there as well. I think Ed Woodward was an incompetent person doing a job that he had no business doing, and his only qualification was the fact that he can make lots and lots of money by holding out a brand, which is what he was doing at Manchester United. And that shouldn't really qualify you to be running a football club. We've been sole charge of running a football club, but unfortunately modern football is that way. So but anyway, he's going to be leaving. That's an awesome news for Manchester United fans like myself. Absolutely perfect. And then you've got Andrea Agnelli, who's also resigned as president of Juventus. And I mean, that's the big one. That is the big one. Agnelli, uh, there's so many things that one can say about a person, and yet sometimes it just feels better not to say anything, because you really don't want to. And I think Andrea Agnelli, for me, I mean, over the last year, I've read quotes, I've heard what he has said, and he just sounds such a stupid moron. I mean, I apologize for anybody who thinks that, but he just sounds like a stupid moron. And you just wonder how these people get in charge of these clubs. How are these people running? How are these people qualified to run multi-billion-dollar companies? Right? That's what clubs are, multi-billion-dollar enterprises. How are they even in charge of that? And how could anyone imagine that these guys could ever run a billion-dollar enterprise like a league? Like how do people think that they even qualified to run it? And how do people who support these kind of initiatives, how do people even think that these guys can get it right? Because they can't. I mean, Agnelli is incompetent, Joel Glazer is incompetent at running football things. Maybe that, I mean, Ed Woodward is a fantastic a talented executive for a bank, or for a marketing company. I think he would be a fantastic person to run those kind of organizations, but not for football. And the same you could say for Agnelli. The same you could say for of the Glazers, of anybody else. And it's staggering how people think like that. But I mean, it's great to hear that he's been that he's resigned, and I think it was long overdue. I mean, some of the comments, I'm not going to go over them, but some of the comments that Agnelli has made is just unbelievable about how, and it illustrates how greed permeates to the right to the top of football, like where it comes from, and I mean, that's the way it needs to be. I think certain action needed to be taken, and I think it's great that we're seeing that happen. I think Florentino Perez will probably be next. I think once this idea falls apart, and it probably will, um, then that's when I think even Perez will probably have to resign. I think some of the Real Madrid fans probably might be happy with that as well to see him go. But that's still some ways away. I think there's an emergency meeting that's happening right now between all 12 Super League clubs, and they want to decide what the future will be. But yeah, I mean, once you got City and Chelsea out, and once you've got Bayern, PSG out already, so you're looking at a 10-team league. Probably, Manchester United will probably want to get out as well. Probably, I'm expecting Barcelona, Atletico will be out as well. Then you look at 7 teams. I mean, then you really can't have a Super League with just 7, 8 teams. And I think the big kicker is other players. I think the players. There's reports now that Jordan Henderson came out with the tweet, Luke Shaw came out with the tweet, Marcus Rashford came out, Bruno Fernandes came out, and so many players have spoken out about it. And Herrera did it yesterday. Pep Guardiola has now come out as well. So I think people are now, there's a bit of a backlash that's happening, and I think people are realizing that, because I mean, it's starting to look more and more like a negative idea, like a bad idea, and I think the clubs are realizing that. So I think they'll probably look at it and try to move forward, because I don't see how they can move forward on it. So I do think it's dead in the water at this point. I do think that the fans have won in some ways. But I think at times you forget that football, really, the main stakeholders are the fans. It's not the corporate suits, it's not the execs, it's not the TV companies, it's not the sponsors, it's the fans. I think sometimes it's easy to forget that, and sometimes we as fans make it easy for execs to forget that as well, but by accepting things, by not making more of a voice, or not using more of our voice. But I think in this case, people have used their voice, and now they've shown that, what, there are certain lines that can't be crossed. There's certain things that you just don't do, and I think that's happened. I think we need to do more of that. We need to do more of that as fans. We need to call out certain more issues that exist in football, and there's a lot of them that exist. I think we need to call that out, and it will take time. It will take a lot of effort, and obviously there's partisanship still, and there's things like that. I mean, this is not a, people are calling it a united front, and it was a majority united front, but there were many fans who were pro Super League. So it wasn't necessarily completely united front, and that's sometimes what comes across is the partisanship that sort of helps these execs get away with things that they shouldn't be getting away with. But I mean, where do we go from here? I mean, that's the interesting question, isn't it? I think, and the first thing is looking back. This is a battle won and not a war won, because I mean, for younger fans, and I mean, I'm young as well, but I mean, I've been hearing about that this Super League things were these Super League concepts have been around since the 90s, right? Since the early 90s, since 1990, 91. 92 was when, again, I don't want to get into history, but 92 was when the Champions League was formed, which was a compromise to avoid a Super League. So from that point on, you're talking like from the 90s that this has been going on, and they finally made good on that threat in a certain way. But I mean, this has been going on for the last 30 years. And I think the question is, has this question finally been ended? Or is it now just a case of, well, we've averted it? And I think it's more the latter. I think it's more aversion rather than domination. And that means that there's going to be, how do you avoid it, right? How do you avoid it? And there's lots of ideas of floating around, the 50+1 rule that should become implemented. I mean, there's that. There's also, having a retrospective fit and proper person's test. I mean, it's hard to say what the correct solution is, because if you do want to go to a 50+1 model, that's great, but how do you implement it? How do owners who invested so much money, how are they going to get that money back, right? Because obviously no one's going to be saying, okay, you know what, I have 76% of shares, for example, in this club, and fair enough, the government regulation says I have to give away 27%. That's fine. So let somebody buy the 27% from me. Who's going to buy it? Is it the government that's going to buy it? Is it the fans that are going to buy it? Who's going to buy those 27% shares back? So I do think that there needs to be a little bit of hard thinking of how they're going to do that. The problem is, once you go down a certain route, it becomes very difficult to backtrack and come back to the right track. And I think we've gone too far down in one direction for it to now come back and go the other way, at least in English football. So, and Spanish, in English football, at least it's going to be difficult. So I don't know how that's going to work. And then having wealthy owners, not having wealthy owners doesn't necessarily mean you can't have corrupt presidents or corrupt chairmen, as we've seen with Real Madrid and Barcelona, and incompetent people that are in charge of those clubs. and they've almost bankrupted them. So so where there's no one size fits all. There's no one rule that's going to work. But I do think that the UEFA needs to take this threat seriously. I think ignoring it and thinking that that's been averted, that's been done and dusted with, it's not. Um, and I don't know what the correct answer is. There's talk of sanctions now that they should probably be banned for a season or two. That there should be some retrospective action that should be taken. Points reductions as well are being talked about just as a deterrent. Um, and as a fan, as a fan, it feels kind of a punishment for the players. I don't think a ban is the right idea, because I don't think the players knew about it. I don't think even the managers knew about it. So you're sort of punishing the players and the managers for something that the execs and the suits did. So I'm not sure if a ban or a points deduction probably makes sense for next season, not for this season, but for next season maybe a points deduction makes sense. Although again, it's punishing the players for something that they were not a part of. So I don't know how that works, but I don't think a banning from competitions is the right way to go, because the players didn't know about it, and you're essentially punishing players and manager. But there needs to be some kind of sanctions. I don't know if money is the right answer, because they have a lot of money to throw around, but maybe some kind of uh, I don't know, some kind of I can't really think of anything right now, but there's got to be some sort of action that needs to be taken, and I'm not creative enough to come up with solutions, but there has to be some sort of action that needs to be taken as a deterrent for these guys, for these greedy guys. Maybe it is withholding of Champions League prize money. Maybe the prize money that was going to be given to them for participating in the Champions League will not be given to them. Instead, that will have to be sort of that will be withheld by UEFA or given to the community, something like that, to their community, so it's spent on something else, maybe something like that. Maybe that might be something that, because then you're hurting the suits at their pockets. They already have a lot of money, but it's kind of like a fine, but you're hurting them in terms of future revenue. But you're also not but you're not sort of hurting the players, but they do still get to play in the competition that they're playing in. So maybe that is something that can be done. So I mean, that I think that's the best solution that I can come up with right now. But if you have something better, just put it in the comment section. Put it, suggest it. Then there's lots of things that I'm sure we can come up with as fans as well and think about that. So maybe that is something that can be done. Other than that, I mean, but that's one point. Obviously, is looking at that. The other thing I think is look at how this thing came about, and I do believe that UEFA has been too bending over backwards to sort of help the big clubs, and this has been going on for a long, 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 long time. Again, it's been going on for 30 years, where they've been bending over backwards to appease the big clubs, and what's been happening is the big clubs have just been wanting more and more and more and more, and eventually got to a point where they wanted more, and UEFA probably they wanted more than UEFA could even do, and that's where they've come. So I think they need to now look at it. Do we really want to help these big clubs, knowing that they're going to stab us in the back anyway? Because now the Champions League format has been revised, by the way, just in case anybody missed that. Then there's a new Champions League format, 36 teams, everybody plays in one group. There's a Swiss system thing. There's two spots for teams with the highest coefficients who haven't qualified directly. I mean, they're doing all of these things to bend over backwards, but why? What for? And all the time these clubs, these snake clubs, they're getting richer and richer, and then they're just backstabbing the leagues and UEFA anyway. So I think UEFA needs to go back, and I think this is the point where UEFA is probably now the strongest leverage that it has over the clubs, because now it knows that the clubs are a little bit on the back foot. So I think what they need to do is they need to look holistically at the competitions. I think that the Champions League needs to stay the way it is. I honestly, I mean, the 32 teams, you want to have four teams, that's fine. Probably two teams qualify automatically. Two teams, the third and fourth, have to go into qualifiers. You've got to go back. In some ways, you've got to curb the power of the big clubs and stop giving them everything that they want, because eventually they're just going to come back and bite you anyway and take what they want anyway, or they're going to try to take what you want anyway. And maybe next time the fans will be more supportive. Maybe next time there won't be as much pressure. We don't know what's going to happen. So they've got to try to do that. That's something that I would look at anyway. And I see this as a fan of a big club, by the way. I say that, and I support a big club, but I don't like the people that run it. I don't. And as a fan, we support the club. We don't necessarily support the people in charge. So there's got to be something that I love competition. I mean, I'm a football fan. I think I said this yesterday, but as a football fan, the real feeling, you feel two emotions. You feel joy when you see your team has won something, and you feel sad when your team loses the opportunity to win something. But then you also feel joy or relief at the fact of escaping some sort of consequence, or you feel sad knowing that there's a consequence that's coming, and they wanted to remove that. They wanted to take that away from us. They wanted to take our emotions away from us. They wanted everybody to feel, that's not how it works. And as a fan, that's not how it works. Um, but I mean, my final thoughts, I think, is I mean, looking back, I think I have to talk about uh, what led to this. I mean, what has driven this sort of greed, and what has really come out of this whole episode, I guess. And it's an ordeal. I mean, it's been a tiring ordeal, to tell you what. And I've not even been on my group, but I mean, just talking to people, debating with people on social media, listening to articles. I mean, it's just exhausting. Just being in that position of being a fan, it's been exhausting. I can only imagine what it is for all of us, and for people who actually in charge of this whole mess. I mean, what must it be like for them? But um what is the fallout from this, and what exactly are the lessons that people can learn from this? I think the biggest thing that I says football wins, and I think that's very important, is that this is a win for football fans. I think this is a win that shows that football fans still have some power over their clubs. That ultimately, even though we are being marginalized, and I say this we because I include myself in that, we're all being marginalized from supporting our football clubs. And I know I'm not, and I know that I'm not a person who was born within the community where the football club was formed. I'm an international football fan. We just we get a bad name and all of that, but the fact is we still support the club. We used to buy the subscriptions to watch the Premier League or the Champions League on TV, and they would get money from that. We still do that. So we still give support our club in some ways. Sometimes we buy the jerseys as well. Some of us, we do buy jerseys as well for the club, so we do support the club in some ways. um but the fact is that more and more we have been marginalized. And there needs to be a hard look um at what what I'm saying. There needs to be a hard look at. We need to believe that we still have the power, and football still needs to believe that it's for the fans. I think a lot of people have got caught up in this whole UEFA corrupt, UEFA is corrupt, so why are we supporting UEFA? The clubs are corrupt, why are we supporting the clubs? I think those two, they exist to serve the fans, right? That's the main thing. That UEFA is only there to govern the game, to regulate the game, so that it's a better experience for the fans. And at the same time, the clubs are there, they are there to provide a product that is good for the fans. I think somewhere it got lost that the UEFA, does UEFA serve the clubs serve the UEFA? No, they don't. They support the fans. The fans are the ones that need that. They're the ones that the game is for. And I think that's been lost, but I think that's going to come out of this. And I think that is something that hopefully the stakeholders of the game will understand, that you don't just screw with the fans. I think the fans should understand that we can't be screwed with, and that we've got a voice, and we've got to express it, we've got to use it whenever and wherever we feel that it's appropriate to do so. Whether it's right or it's wrong, we got to do it. And I think that's something that hopefully comes out of this. I mean, some of the comments over the last 2 days, just from the likes of Rayola, the likes of Agnelli. I mean, the people talking about Agnelli, I remember saying that let's start with 90 minutes is too long for a football game. I mean, how, what do you mean 90 minutes is too long for a football game? I mean, that's like saying, well, I mean, people say test cricket is too long because last 5 days, and then people would rather watch 90 minutes game football. I mean, what is a small game? You want 20-minute, 10-minute keep up games? Is that what we're looking at? I mean, there's talking about Agnelli, who's saying that he wants to have 15 minutes sort of on demand streaming of 15-minute matches. Basically you could go to Amazon and you could pay for 15-minute clips of the last 15 minutes, because apparently that's all young football fans can watch, that they can't watch anything else. They only want to watch 15 minutes of football. I mean, it's madness how people find creative ways to to try and engineer some excitement out of something. The reason why people are not interested in football, if young people are not interested in football, has nothing to do with Fortnite. It has nothing to do with the game is being too long. It has to do with the fact that you have killed a product, killed your leagues to the point of extinction, to the point of the fact that they're so uncompetitive. I mean, what young person would want to watch a football match where he or she already knows that Juventus are going to win the league title 9 times out of 10? I mean, you have and I include the Bundesliga in this. I mean, Bundesliga no stains. Yes, they still have the European Super League, and Bayern about to win another league title. I mean, where is the competitiveness in that? Why would anyone want to watch the Bundesliga? Why would anyone want to be a fan of a Bundesliga club aside from Bayern, when they know Bayern are going to win it? And Bayern fans themselves are probably going, well, they win it every year. No big deal. Why should I watch it? And why would anyone be a fan of Roma or be a fan of uh, Napoli? Why would anyone support those clubs when they know that those teams are never and have no chance ever of winning the league title or winning trophies, right? I mean, like it or not, you're trying to attract a casual fan base with the promise of with the promise of exciting football. Why would anyone want that? Why does anyone want to watch a game between Juventus and Vicenza, for example, when they know Vicenza has no chance of beating Juventus because Juventus have decimated the league? I mean, the fact is that there's so many dead rubber games and so many uncompetitive games That's where football is in danger. There's always, you got to believe in yourself, that that you've got to believe that the underdog can win. It may not win, and most of the times they don't win, but you've got to have that feeling, and they don't have it. So killing your own league and then crying foul is not exactly the way to go. So I mean, it's just a mockery, and I'm glad that these people are getting out of the game. I'm glad that football is getting rid of these people. I don't know the people who will come next are going to be better. History tells us that they are not going to be much better than what is there before. But at least the more leeches we can get out of the game, I think the better that is. But I mean, what are your thoughts on this whole ESL madness that has happened? And hopefully we can now see the end of this, and hopefully with this light at the end of the tunnel for this whole ideas to get lost. And I did post a thread, by the way, which was very interesting on Twitter. I did post it on Twitter and Facebook. If you haven't checked it out, do check it out. It's a wonderful thread about inclusion and unconscious bias and racism, casual racism at the bottom level. So do check it out. I think it's a well worth a thread worth reading. So please do check it out. And it's on my thread. It's from someone else, from Simon Cooper actually. And it's very insightful, very interesting. But do share your comments as well. What do you think now? And what is the way forward for football? What is the way forward for these Premier League, for the Champions League, for La Liga, Serie A? What is the way forward for these 12 clubs, these 12 snakes, whatever you want to call them? What is the way forward for them now to rehab themselves and get back into the good races with the fans? And I think, in general, where do you think football is headed? Do share in your comment section. We've got a couple of things planned for this week. I don't know what's going to happen with the Super League. Maybe tomorrow will bring something new. So I don't know if we're going to be able to do what we planned, but we'll keep updated on the situation, and I'll keep posting videos if a new relevant information comes through that's important to share. But thank you so much for watching. Please smash a like if you enjoyed it, and do subscribe to the channel. If you're new, subscribe to my Facebook page if you're watching this on Facebook. I really do appreciate your follows, your likes, and it really helps me continue to do more videos, and hopefully we can keep that going. So thank you so much for watching. Take care, have a good day or night, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.